let's move on to the inverter option. So why would you put this inverter in the trailer? You've probably put it in because you're going to be camping off the grid, dry camping, and you want to have access to 120 volt power. So what this unit will do is it inverts the power from 12 volt, and in here it'll invert it to 120 volt power. So again, we want to show you how the wiring setup is on this. We use some heavy gauge wire, and basically that runs to the battery, and there on the battery post there's a 200 amp fuse on the battery, and then from there, if you look on this side here, essentially we've got a 120 volt outlet on the end. Switch it on, you've now got 120 volt, but keep in mind it's inverting energy from your battery. So the idea is turn this on, use it for whatever you're doing, whether you're microwaving dinner, blow drying your hair, whichever. Turn it on, use it, turn it off. You don't want to leave this turned on all the time. Problem is this uses a little bit of 12 volt energy to invert to 120 volt. So even though you may not be using any 120 volt power, it's still using some 12 volt power to invert it and be ready for you. So make sure you turn it on, use it, turn it off. Never leave it turned on. So we offer two packages for this inverter. One of them is the inverter just powers one outlet, which if that's the case, you'll have this little guy located in your bench seat, and then typically right beside it there will be a designated 120 volt outlet. It'll be labeled inverter, and this unit will only power that inverter, or that one plug. If you've got the full transfer switch and all of the outlets powered, then again, if you've got the solar panel, which is pretty typical because you're using battery power, having the solar panel to charge your batteries up, that's our typical setup in the trailers. This is your on-off for turning the inverter on. Let's talk quickly about on the face of the inverter here. So there is a master switch on the inverter. So ideally you shouldn't have to go underneath the seat to access this. The idea is it's got a remote switch, whether it's this is your remote switch or this is your remote switch. So looking at the actual inverter here, again, they're not very clear on how the switch works, but it's a three-way switch. There's off and there's on, and you can see we've lit it up. So if this is turned on here, it's on and it overrides your remote switch. So even though you don't see your remote switch turned on, it's still on and using battery power. So ideally, again, have a look at the owner's manual. This should be in remote mode, and again, control it using the switches in the bench seat. Again, whether it's this little guy or your solar controller. The downside with this that we see is there's no real reminder light or anything to let you know that you've left it on. So just keep that in mind. Turn it on, turn it off. That's as much as we can say. So let's show you how it fires up using the solar. So there's this AC switch, and when it does come to life here, you'll see that same symbol will show up in the display here. So we just push and hold. So that's now on, and you can actually see we're losing a little bit of voltage while it's running. And then looking on the side, you can see it's come to life. So essentially now we have 120 volt power accessible here. Again, if you've just got an outlet mounted in a bench, we just come off of here to the outlet. If you've got the full transfer switch, this is what it looks like. We've got there's a plug in here, And now this isn't quite clear in the trailer setup, but we've got a sub panel and a transfer switch mounted behind your converter panel here. So we've got a little note here to let us know when you fire this up, if you've got the transfer switch, there's a 40-second delay. Nothing's happening here. If you look over to the side, we've got a little light plugged in. Oh, there we go. So obviously when I plugged it in, it's taken 40 seconds, and now we've got some power running through the trailer. So just again, if you've got the full transfer, just remember when you turn it on, just be patient. 40 seconds, and then that switch will trigger over. So again, now you got power, use it for whatever you're using it for. Again, if you're watching a movie on your TV, that's fine. And if you left it on all night long because you fell asleep watching a movie, fine. But just make sure you turn it off. That's just a good rule of thumb. So again, not much to do here, not really too much to read here, but to just show you now a little more in depth on where these outlets are, and why. Inside your power center here, here's all of your house breakers. If you didn't have the transfer switch package, you would have two 15-amp breakers here. There's two circuits in the trailer for the 120 outlet circuits. You would have two 15s labeled outlets. But we don't want the inverter to try and run all of these things, so we have to pull them out of this and put them into a sub panel. So this sub panel will be mounted underneath your bench seat, and you can see here is the two outlet circuits. So we've put a little tag in here so that, let's assume in the trailer the outlets have quit working, a circuit has tripped. When you come in here, there's a little tag here to remind you that actually lift up the seat to find the circuits for the outlets. This is a 30 amp that runs this little sub panel. So that's really that. Keep in mind also on the front of the inverter that this is a ground fault outlet. So if for some reason your breakers are all in good shape, just have a look at the front of this. I don't see necessarily a light, but you might have to do the reset on the front of that.